How does a driver go from saving a team, winning races, and being hailed as a tire management master to facing constant criticism and losing his seat at one of F1's top teams? This is the story of Sergio Perez, a tale of triumph, controversy, and what it really takes to survive in Formula One. Don't get me wrong, Checo's early years were actually pretty impressive. The guy started karting at 6 in Mexico, but this wasn't some rich kid playing around. His dad Antonio was a former driver himself, proper passionate about racing. But they weren't exactly swimming in cash. In his debut season, he grabbed 4 wins and finished runner-up in his category. Not bad for a 6-year-old, right? By 1998, he's actually become the youngest junior champion in Mexican karting history. Just dominated his category, showing everyone this wasn't just some lucky streak. The thing is, Mexico isn't exactly known for pumping out F1 drivers, is it?
Mexico is known for tacos, tortas, beaches.
Since the 1980s, they hadn't had anyone in F1, not since Hector Rabach. And if you're claiming you know who that is, you're probably lying. The problem was, by the early 2000s, Perez had basically hit a wall in Mexico. You can win everything there, but it doesn't mean jack if you want to make it to F1.
Mexico is known for tacos.
His family actually went and sold their furniture store just to get him to Europe. Talk about commitment. 15 years old, living in a bloody restaurant owned by his team manager in Germany, racing Formula BMW with 4-speed media. Mental setup, right? The results weren't exactly brilliant at first. Bit of a culture shock going from dominating in Mexico to racing these European kids who'd been doing it since they could walk. But he was showing these flashes of what he could do. Proper car control, already showing signs of that tire management that would make him famous later. Then in 2007, he properly turned it up. British F3 with T-Sport won 14 out of 21 races in the national class. Absolutely demolished everyone. The way he was adapting to different tracks, different conditions, you could see there was something special there. That's when Carlos Slim, this mega-rich telecommunications bloke, saw something in Checo and backed him with proper money through Telemex. Now, some people reckon Slim's money was the only reason Perez made it to F1, but that's proper rubbish when you look at what happened next. GP2 was where things got interesting. Started in GP2 Asia in 2009, getting podiums and showing steady improvement. But 2010, that's when he properly arrived. 5 wins with Bawa Adax, including Monaco, which, let's be honest, is not exactly a track where you can fake talent. Finished second in the championship behind Pastor Maldonado, who, if you remember, was basically either winning races or finding new ways to crash.
A lack of mentality here, because he's got to have more concentration. The first one, especially with fiddling around with the knobs on the steering wheel, but as far as this one goes, and that reaction there from the mechanic, I think sums it up.
The way Perez managed his tires in GP2 was actually mental. He'd make them last ages while everyone else was struggling. In October 2010, Sauber announced that Perez would join their team for the 2011 F1 season. This move also marked the beginning of a partnership between Sauber and Telmex, highlighting the influence of Perez's sponsorship in securing his F1 seat. By 2011, Perez was in F1 with Sauber, first Mexican driver in F1 since the 80s. First race in Australia, and what does he do? Only goes and does this one-stop strategy when everyone else is pitting 2 or 3 times. These new Pirelli tires were tricky, but Perez made them look easy. Finished 7th before they binned him off for some technical thing with the rear wing. Hit a proper scary moment in Monaco though. Massive crash in qualifying at the Nouvelle Chicane. Got a concussion, had to miss Monaco and Canada. Came back in Valencia like nothing happened. The 2012 season though, that's when Checo showed himself. The Sauber C31 was actually decent, but what Perez did with it was something else. Malaysia was absolutely mental. He's chasing down Alonso in the wet, in a Sauber of all things. Second place finish, but he could have won it if he hadn't made a tiny mistake.
Certainly in the runoff zone, yes, he's put 2 wheels on the curb.
Sauber's best result since they came back as an independent team.
Yes!
The Ferrari were watching him like hawks. He was in their driver academy at that time. Then Canada, another podium. Started 15th, did this brilliant one-stop strategy when everyone else was struggling with their tires. But Monza, that was just wow. Started 12th, and the way he carved through the field was brilliant. The straight line speed of that Sauber was alright, but the way he was passing Ferraris and McLarens, that was all Checo. Second place again, and everyone's going, hang on, this guy in a Sauber is doing what now? 3 podiums in a midfield car. Now that's impressive. Outscored his teammate Kobayashi, who only managed 1 podium all year. Everyone thought Ferrari would snap him up to replace Massa, but they reckoned he needed more experience. This surge in performance coincided with Lewis Hamilton's decision to leave McLaren for Mercedes in 2013, creating a vacancy at McLaren. Perez was announced as Hamilton's replacement on September 28, 2012.
I expect to have a very tough start of the season. It's not going to be an easy one, but it's all about consistency. It's all about the 19 races. It will take me some time to adapt.
McLaren actually thought they'd found their Hamilton replacement in Perez. But 2013, what a mess that was. The MP4S28 was proper rubbish. First time McLaren hadn't got a podium since 1980. Think about that. 40 years of getting podiums. Then they stick Perez in the car and it all goes wrong. The thing is, it wasn't just the car. Perez was trying to make things happen, getting proper aggressive with Button, but it wasn't working out. In Bahrain, they're fighting like it's for the championship, but they're actually scrapping for 6th. Button's on the radio going, this is too dangerous. Bit rich coming from him, but there you go. Their different driving styles were causing trouble. Button's all smooth and methodical. Perez is trying to make stuff happen. Monaco was where it properly kicked off. Perez tried this mental move on Raikkonen, ended up in the barriers. Everyone's going, he's too aggressive, but what's he supposed to do? The car is rubbish, the team's falling apart, and he's trying to prove himself. Best result was 5th in India, showed some of that old tire management magic. But by the end of the year, Button's got 73 points, Perez got 49, and McLaren's thinking, right, time to try something else. After 1 season, they basically went, nah, we're done here, and binned him off for Kevin Magnussen. Now, there was a lot of speculation at the time that the entire signing to McLaren was not a great idea in first place. See, Checo's career-long supporter, Telmex, was expected to become a significant sponsor for McLaren, potentially replacing Vodafone. However, the anticipated sponsorship did not materialize as planned, partly due to the cancellation of the 2014 Mexican Grand Prix, which Telmex had intended to support for global exposure. I bet this development influenced McLaren's decision to release Perez after just 1 season. And by the way, you've made it this far into the video, don't forget to subscribe.
For me, there is no point to look back. I want to look forward. I want to be here after 1 year and say that it was the best thing that could have happened in my career to move out from McLaren to join Force India.
But here's where it gets good. Force India picked him up for 2014, paired him with Nico Hülkenberg, solid lineup that. 3rd race with the team, he's on the podium in Bahrain. Car wasn't exactly brilliant, but Perez could make it dance when it mattered. Finished 10th in the championship, decent return to form after the McLaren mess. 2015, another podium in Russia, and the way he held off Bottas and Raikkonen at the end was highly impressive. His tire management was so good, it was actually ridiculous. He'd make these one-stop strategies work when everyone else was doing 2 or 3 stops. Finished ahead of his teammate in the championship, showing everyone he wasn't just a one-season wonder. 2016 was probably his best year there. Podiums in Monaco and Baku. Monaco in the wet? That's proper driver's track stuff. Then Baku, he's got a 5-place grid penalty, but still gets on the podium. The team finished 4th in the Constructors' Championship, best result Force India had ever had. Perez was proving he could deliver consistently, not just in the chaos. Then you've got the whole thing with Ocon in 2017. These two were going at it, weren't they? Both wanting to prove themselves, both thinking they're the next big thing. Crashed in Baku, crashed in Spa, it was getting a bit silly. The team's trying to tell them to calm down, but they're both young, both hungry, both want to prove themselves.
Do you think you were blocked?
No, I think Checo blocked Lance.
Are you his father?
No.
Still, Perez outperformed Ocon in race results, showing his experience counted for something. 2018 gets even more mental. Force India's going bust, people aren't getting paid, it's all falling apart. What does Perez do? Actually saves the team by putting him into administration. Bit weird when you think about it, saving a team by basically forcing them into bankruptcy. But it worked, didn't it? Lawrence Stroll comes in with his money, team gets saved, everyone keeps their jobs. Not many drivers would have had the balls to do that. All through these years, Perez was building this reputation. Brilliant brilliant tire management, great racecraft, proper solid on Sundays, 5 podiums with Force India. That's not normal for a midfield team. He wasn't just getting lucky either, he was making these strategies work, picking his moments, delivering when it mattered. That's what made the Force India years so special. He wasn't just surviving in F1, he was proper thriving. From the McLaren disaster to becoming one of the most respected drivers on the grid. He'd shown everyone that given the right car and the right conditions, he could mix it with the best of them. But bloody hell, no one could have predicted what was coming next.
Optimistic for this year, definitely. I think we are in the best starter scenario that we ever been. So yeah, hopefully we can have a very successful year.
Batteries are recharged.
2020 at Racing Point, this is where things get properly mental. The team rolls out this car that everyone's calling the pink Mercedes because it looks exactly like the previous year's championship-winning Merc. Everyone's kicking off about it, other teams are fuming, but it was actually legal.
How is it that every time we ask you or Sergio about the pace of the car, you can't wipe a grin off your face?
RP20 was a massive step up from what they'd had before. Perez finally getting a car that can fight near the front properly. Started the season strong, points in the first 3 races, including 6th at the Styrian GP. Then, bloody typical, he gets COVID. First F1 driver to test positive, misses both races at Silverstone. But when he comes back, doesn't miss a beat. 5th in Spain straight away, showing everyone he's still got it. The car's got pace, but what happens at the Sakira GP is actually insane. Gets taken out on the first lap dead last, and what does he do? Only goes and wins the whole bloody thing. Think about that for a second. Last to first. Hadn't been done since 1959. The way he managed that race was brilliant. While Mercedes are having a nightmare with their pit stops, Perez just keeps his head down, picks off car after car. First Mexican to win an F1 race since Pedro Rodriguez in 1970. 50 years of waiting, then he does it in probably the most dramatic way possible.
Look up there as Perez is caught by Charles Leclerc. There's 3 cars gone off and turn 4. The man who was in last place at the end of lap 1 comes home to win the Sakira Grand Prix.
The mental thing is, Racing Point had already told him he was getting binned for 2021. They'd signed Vettel, 4-time world champion and all that, but Perez goes and shows them what they're missing out on.
Hey Sergio, welcome to Red Bull.
Thanks, man.
Congratulations and welcome to the team.
However, Red Bull came calling for 2021 and things got interesting. They'd been in some driver drama trying to find someone who could handle being Verstappen's teammate. Gasly, binned. Albon, same story. The second Red Bull seat was becoming a proper career killer.
Now, if I were in my car, I'd look at that space and go, well, that's too small. And then I'd go find another. But that's not what a French person would do.
The roots of Perez's opportunity trace back to his remarkable 2020 season with Racing Point, where he demonstrated the kind of strategic brilliance and resilience that caught Red Bull's eye. First few races were actually rough for Perez. He couldn't get his head around the car in qualifying. The RB16B was quick, but it was different from anything he'd driven before. But then Baku happens. And what does he do? Verstappen's tire goes pop while he's leading, Hamilton mucks up the restart, and Perez is there to pick up the pieces. First win for Red Bull in the bag. But it was Abu Dhabi where he finally earned his stripes. Hamilton's leading, looking like he's going to win the championship, but Perez puts on this defensive masterclass. 7 laps of holding him up, using every trick in the book. They started calling him the Minister of Defense after that. Without those crucial seconds, Verstappen probably wouldn't win that title. Finished 4th in the championship with 190 points, not bad for a first season.
We're here in Silverstone after my first run in the 16B car. This is not the 16B car at the moment. Look. This is the Honda we're driving today.
2022. That's when Perez actually looked like he might be able to challenge Verstappen. The RB18 was an absolute weapon, and Perez was finally getting comfortable. Gets his first pole position in Saudi Arabia, taking him 215 races to do it, but better late than never. Then Monaco happens, and not in the usual Perez crash bang way. Actually qualifies ahead of Verstappen, controls the race in the wet, manages the strategy perfectly. Everyone's going, hang on, Checo might actually be a championship contender here. Gets to Barcelona, he's properly in the fight, but then it starts slipping away. The car development's going more and more towards Verstappen's driving style. All pointy front end and loose rear, which isn't exactly Perez's cup of tea. Still gets podiums in Spain, Belgium, Japan, but Verstappen's just on another level. Then you've got all this tension with Verstappen in Brazil. Max refuses to let Perez pass when the team asks him to.
Yeah, don't worry about the DRS, Max. Let Checo through. Let Checo through. Max, let Checo through, please.
I told you already last time. You guys don't ask that again to me. Okay?
I heard on the radio the team asking Max to give you the place back for the championship, and he refused. Talk to me about how that played out for you today.
I was told to let him by, that I was going to get back the position. I don't know what was the communications with him, on his side.
He refused to. He said, "You know my reasons." Do you have any idea what that might be about?
No idea.
Everyone's going, what's going on here then? But it's showing the cracks starting to appear. Finishes third in the Drivers' Championship with 305 points, his best season statistically, but missing out on second to Leclerc by 3 points, that hurts. Red Bull wanted that 1-2 in the championship, and they weren't exactly happy about losing it.
Deleted. Oh dear, Sergio Perez, you got the car to do it. You had the speed to be right up there, challenging your teammate, and now you're not through.
2023 was a roller coaster. The season started with genuine promise. Wins in Saudi Arabia and Azerbaijan, only 6 points behind Verstappen after Miami. The early performances suggested Perez might finally be the championship challenger everyone had hoped he'd become. However, those initial races masked a deeper problem brewing beneath the surface. The team dynamics were becoming increasingly strained. Verstappen's dominance was absolute, and the car's development was becoming more and more tailored to his driving style. Perez's smooth tire management approach was increasingly at odds with the RB19's aggressive setup. Then Monaco happens. It was the beginning of the end. Crashes in qualifying, starts last, can't even get in the points. This wasn't just a bad weekend, it was a psychological turning point. The RB19 was the most dominant car we've seen since Mercedes in 2020. Verstappen won 19 races with it, but Perez getting knocked out in Q1 6 times. That's probably embarrassing when you got the best car on the grid by a mile. The team's frustration became increasingly public. Christian Horner was on the telly every weekend trying to explain what was going wrong. Red Bull tried everything. New engineers, different setups, sports psychologists, the lot. They brought in performance coaches, adjusted the cars, set up, even tried to rebuild Perez's confidence from the ground up. Nothing worked. Every time Perez tried to match Verstappen's style, he ended up making mistakes. Try to be smoother, too slow. Try to be aggressive, even worse. The tension reached a boiling point in Brazil. By the end of the year, Perez was 290 points behind Verstappen, more points than most drivers score in 2 full seasons. It was a gulf so massive it made a mockery of the idea of a competitive second driver. 2024 was just painful to watch. The pressure had completely consumed Perez. Every session, every qualifying, every race, he was making rookie mistakes that would embarrass a driver in their first year of Formula One. Spinning in qualifying, getting stuck behind slower cars, making desperate overtakes that ended in collisions. It was like watching a driver's confidence completely disintegrated in real time. Red Bull's patience was wearing desperately thin. The team that had once supported drivers through rough patches was now looking elsewhere. The worst bit? Red Bull was dropping from first to third in the Constructors' Championship. McLaren and Ferrari were now ahead of them, and it was basically all down to Perez not delivering a consistent performance in the second car. The fundamental problem was brutally simple. The Red Bull car was now completely built around Verstappen's driving style. Max likes this proper aggressive turn-in loose rear end setup that requires absolute precision and confidence.
The walls are like super close here.
Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing when you talk about walls? I'm like, I'm terrified. I'm terrified. You're going, ha ha, walls.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Just don't hit them.
No. Okay, I'll try not to.
If you're scared, close your eyes.
Perez, he's always been smooth, looking after the tires, a style that worked brilliantly in the midfield, but was completely incompatible with the Red Bull philosophy. It was like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Technically possible, but never going to work properly. By mid-2024, the writing was on the wall. Red Bull was already looking at their young drivers, Tsunoda, Lawson, and others, waiting in the wings. Perez was making increasingly desperate moves in races, trying to prove he still deserved the seat, but every mistake just made things worse. That retirement in Abu Dhabi after hitting Bottas on lap 1, that was basically the final nail in the coffin. The team's internal discussion discussions had already begun. Perez was no longer just underperforming, he had become a liability. His inability to extract performance from the car was costing Red Bull points, prestige, and potentially millions in prize money. The once promising partnership was now a cautionary tale of what happens when a driver can't adapt to a team's evolving philosophy. At the end of the season, Perez was cut from Red Bull.
But he's decided that now is the right time for him to step away from being a Formula One driver.
Perez wasn't bad, he just wasn't quite good enough for what Red Bull needed. Tire management was proper, probably one of the best the sport's ever seen. In chaotic races, he was amazing. Give him a wet track or a safety car restart and he'd make something happen. But qualifying, that was his weakness. Couldn't get the tires in the window when it mattered. Couldn't handle the car when it was on the limit. Next to Verstappen, we just looked worse and worse. 300 points behind your teammate? That's not exactly close, is it? In the midfield, he was actually one of the best. Give him a decent car and a bit of chaos, he'd get you a result. Pressure of being Verstappen's teammate, of having to perform every single weekend, of knowing that anything less than perfect wasn't good enough, just broke him in the end. Now the question is, can Perez find a way to return to F1? Maybe Audi in 2026? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.